Dear students, let's try to discuss categories of functions. So these are the different categories of function. You can see we have like function with no arguments and no return value. So then we will see the example of function with arguments and no return value. The third category would be function with no arguments but return value. The fourth one would be function with arguments and with return value. So let's try to write a program for each of these categories. First of all, we are going to work on function with no arguments and no return value. So if there is no return value, it means the data type should be void. Now let's try to write a program for this. First of all, we need to include the header files, okay, IO stream, and then we are going to use standard namespace, and after this main. But wait, what we do is that first of all we have to declare the function. So function with no arguments and no return value. That's why when there is no return value, you have to write void table. This function will be used to print the table of any given number. So that's why here we are going to declare the function name with table, and with no arguments mean we have to leave this as empty. Okay, so now let's try to write definition for this function table. Now void table, in this case what we need to do, we need to declare few variables. First of all, we are going to declare variables like n, okay, and then we're going to use variable c. Fine. So n will be used for number, any number for which we are going to print the table, and c will be used as a counter variable. So let's try to uh, initialize the variable c from 1. Now after this, we're going to ask the user, please enter any number. Please enter any number. So a number will be entered by the user, and n. After this, once the user enters the number, the next thing that we do would be to use the loop, and in this we are going to use for loop. So if we are going to use for loop, then we have to initialize it inside, or if you have initialized the counter variable outside the for loop, then you only need to use this semicolon. Fine. So c less than or equal to 10 and then c plus plus. Now this is the main logic of the program. C out. First of all, we need to print the value of n, for example 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever. Fine. And then we need to print the star, and after this we're going to print c, and then after c we are going to print equal, and after this we're going to print n star c, and after this end line. So what happens? Let's try to understand this program. Oh, we have to call the program as well. So this is table. Okay, we're going to call this function, which is the definition of this function lies inside here. So you can see this is the declaration part. Okay, function with no return value and no argument. Fine. And this is the calling of the function. When we call this function, automatically the control will enter into this definition of the function, where these statements will be executed. For example, integer n and c is initialized from 1. Then we will enter any number, and that, let's assume we enter 3. So 3 will be stored in n, and after this we have used the condition c less than or equal to 10. Condition is true. That's why it will print the value of n, which is 3. So 3 into c, which is 1. The value of c is 1. So 3 into 1, that's equal to 3. And then end line. After this, control comes here, the value of c becomes 2, so 2 less than or equal to 10 control. The condition is true, that's why the value of n is still 3. 3 into 2, that's equal to 3 into 2, that's equal to 6. So a table of a given number would be printed. So each time this will add the value of c, 1 will be added with the value of c, then condition will be checked till when the value of c becomes greater than 10. In that case, loop will be stopped and we will see the output on the screen. So this is called the function definition, okay? And this is called the, this one is called the function call, and this is function declaration or function prototype. So let's try to run this program and see the result on the screen. Suppose we want to print the table of 5. Now you can see this is basically the table of a given number, which is 5. So this is the example of a function with no return value and no return value and no arguments. So we will move to the other category of the function, and that is function with arguments and no return value. Now we are going to pass some arguments. Fine. So arguments would be in the form of some variables. So let's try to write a program. For this I have to remove this, and this time I'm going to write a totally new function. So the function would be something like this, or let's assume the square. We would like to print the square of a number, or let's assume the cube of a number. So we are going to pass an integer value, okay? Now remember, if there are many arguments you want to pass, okay, then you have to separate it with comma. Let's assume I'm not going to write the cube, I'm going to write a maximum value. So we are going to pass two integer variables, okay? You can either write the data types, or you can also explicitly define the variables, okay, in the function declaration. But I'm only sticking with this. I only write the two data type like integer. What does this mean? It means that you are telling the compiler that I'm going to pass two integer numbers from the main function to max function, okay? And it is not going to return any value to the main function. So that's why here I have to write the main function, and after the main function I'm going to declare two variables, integer x or integer, let's suppose a and b. So I have declared two variables, okay? And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take input from the user, enter value in, enter first value, so I would like to enter the first value, and then enter second value. I would like to enter the second value as well, and that will be stored in B. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass the value of A and B to this max function. So how can I do? I have to write the name of the function and then the variable name. These are called the actual argument, okay? So it means that the value which are stored, the copy of these value will be passed to the max function. Now so far we have not defined the function. So let's try to define the function. No return value, name of the function, and here we have to use integer x and integer y. Fine. So integer x, it means we are going to compare two value. Remember that the value we enter here, we are going to pass these values to this function. So x is going to take the value of a and b is going to take the value of y. So let's try to compare both these values. If x is greater than, y, then you need to see out you need to see out x is greater value or larger value, fine. Otherwise, else y is greater value, fine. So this is what this is, basically the function definition. We have completed the function definition. Now how this works, remember this is the second category program, function with no return value but with arguments. So these are the arguments. We're going to pass these two arguments, these two values from the main function to the function max. Now max is going to receive these two values, okay. So a is going to x is going to store the value of a, y is going to store the value of b. Then these values are compared, like x greater than y, whatever value would be greater, that will be printed on the screen. So this is the definition and this is the function calling. So let's try to run this program and see the result on the screen. First of all, we are going to input 5 and then 10. Now second, enter second value. So this is greater, so we will see this thing on the screen, 10 is greater value. Now suppose we want to like enter 50 in A and 10 in B. These values will be passed, so x will receive the value 50 and y will receive the value y. Y will receive the value 10. So x is greater than y. Because 50 is greater than 10, that's why this statement will be executed. You can see 50 is greater than 50 is greater value, okay. This message is printed because the condition is true. Let me give you another example of the same category, and this time we're going to write a function, okay, to print the cube of a number. So what we do is, there is void, we have to write void, and we have to write the cube or square of any number. Now we are going to pass any single variable, single argument from main function, okay. That's why in function definition we have specified that the data type of variable will be int, okay. So moving on to the main function, what we do is that we are going to pass this a, okay, or x. We are going to pass this x, fine. So cout, please enter value of x, okay. And then you can see here we have got the x. Now this x will be passed to the function square. Remember, we have not defined the function square yet. So in this, after the main function, we are going to define the square function, and this time we are going to write the s, okay. S will receive the value of x, fine. So this time what we do is cout square is s into s, fine. So this is how a very simple program to print the square of a single number. When you try to run this program, you would, for example, the square of 6 is 36. So 36 is printed, okay. Now in here, this is called the function with no return value, okay, with no return value, but with arguments, okay, with arguments. So that's why what we did here, we declare a variable, a very simple variable, and then we display a message to the user. The user will enter a value, like here we enter 6, and then this 6 will be passed to the square function, so s will receive the value of x, and then here you can see we have write the logic of this program. So 6 into 6, that's equal to 36. That is printed on the screen. Now let's go back to the Word file, and here we are going to work with another category of the function, and that is function with no arguments but return value. This time what we do is we are not going to pass any uh, we are not going to pass any value, okay, from main function, but we are going to return a value to the main function. So that's why we are going to return an integer value to the main function. That's why the return type here is now int, okay. So int, this time what we do is we are going to write the name of the function. So this is the definition. It means that the function is going to return integer value to the main function, okay. And after this we're going to write the main function. After this we're going to write the declare the variable for storing the return value, okay, res, and then we're going to call the function. The function name is cube, and then we are going to print this the cube of the cube is, okay, the cube is res. So let us try to write the definition, because function is already called. So now we are going to write the definition for this function, int cube, okay. So int cube, after this we need to write x. Now what we do is we need to write a simple statement, okay, and then return statement. So return statement will be used. First of all, we need to write this formula. Now this is complete. The function definition is complete. Let's try to understand this program. First of all, what we did, we declared the function. So this is the function prototype, and then we have declared a single variable. Fine. So this variable is going to store the value which is returned from this cube function, okay, and res is going to store that value, and then we are going to print that value in this line. So first of all, you can see that how this program works. Now when there is a call to this cube function, the execution of the main function would stop here, and the control will transfer to this particular point, okay. Here we need to uh, take input for this as well, or if you can directly write x that's equal to 10, fine. Now here there is a function call. So when there is a function call, what happens, the control will transfer to this function, okay. And here you can see what happens is that, okay, there should be no argument as well, because in the function declaration what we did, we basically we did not write any arguments, okay. So there should not be any arguments in the function definition as well, fine. So in this case what we did here, we basically call the function cube, okay. The function cube is going to the control of this main the control will be stopped here, and the control will enter into the cube function. Now in the cube function, what I did, I basically initialized a variable called x and from the value 10. So a single value will be calculated, for example x into x into x. It means 10 into 10 into 10, so 1000. This single value will be returned back to the main function, okay. So like the single value 1000 will be replaced with the function call, okay, and 1000 will be stored in res, and then you can have the cube as 1000. So this is how it works. So let's try to run this program. You can see the cube is what? The cube is 1000, okay. Because of this return statement, it returned that 1000 back to here. So this cube, the function call is replaced with 1000, and that is 1000 is stored in res variable, and then it is displayed on the screen, okay. So this is that third category of the function in which we have the return value but no arguments. Let's try to look at the number fourth category, and that is function with arguments and with return value. So this time we're going to use both arguments as well as the return value. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a simple program. For example, integer minimum. This time I'm going to print a minimum value between two uh, different integers. Okay, so this is basically the return type. It means that a single value will be returned back to the main function. Okay, then it is going to print the smallest of those values. Fine. So here we are going to pass two integer values from the main function. Okay, so for this reason what we need to do, we need to declare two variables. Okay, integer a and b. Now a and b are the two variables. Another variable for storing the minimum value, so we are going to write m. Okay, so let's try to input values. Enter first value. Okay, enter first value. We are going to enter first value, and then after that cn a, and then we are going to enter second value. Enter second value, and then cnb. Fine. So let's try to call the function. So for calling the function, because function is going to return a value, that's why we need to declare a variable so that we can store the return value. So for that we have declared the variable m. Okay, and let's try to call the function, and the function name is minimum. We're going to pass the a and b to this function. Okay, and a single value will be stored in m, and then we're going to print this value the smallest of the values between, let's try to print a and b. That's equal to what? That would be equal to m. Fine. So this is what? This is basically this is the function call. So these two values will be passed to this function minimum. So far we have not called, so far we have not defined the function. So let's try to define the function. The function name is minimum, and here we are going to write we are going to declare two variables. Okay, so x is going to receive the value of a, y is going to receive the value of b. Now we are going to give this condition: if x is less than y, okay, return what? Return x. Otherwise return y. If the value of y is less than x, then you need to return the value of y. So for example, we would enter, now this is, I will explain that point later. This is called the function, this is function definition, this is function call, and this is function prototype. You can see here in the prototype we specified that we are going to pass two values to this minimum function, and the function is going to return a value. So let's try to run this program and see the result on the screen. Now where is the control? The control is in here, enter first value. So we would like to enter the first value, which will be stored in a. Fine. And then we will see enter second value. Where is control? Control is here. So we are going to enter value for b, and this would be, let's assume 70. So what happens after this? When we press enter, this function will be called. Okay, so because a has got 10, b is 70, these values will be passed to the minimum function. X will receive the value of a, which is 10, b will receive the value of y will receive the value of b, which is 70, and then two numbers will be compared, and then we will see this thing on the screen. The smallest of the values between A and B is equal to 10. So let's try to, you can see here the smallest of the values between 10 and 70, that's equal to 10. Fine. So let me run this program once again. Fine, let me run this program. Here in this case, what we are going to do, where is the control now? The control is now here in the A. So we are going to print 50. Okay, 50 will be stored in A and 30 will be stored in B. Okay, or let's assume 49 will be stored in B. Now after this, what happens when we press enter? The activity of the main will be stopped here, okay, and because there is a call to this function, so this function will be called. The value of A, which is 50, that will be stored in X. The value of B, which is 49, that will be stored in Y. Now after this, there is a comparison. If the value of X is what? That is 50. So if 50 is less than 49, return X. In this case, this is not true. That's why this else part will be executed, which is 49. So 49 value, okay, 49 will be returned back to the main function, and with this function call, 49 will be replaced. Okay, so 49 is going to be stored in M. After this, M will have 49, then this message will be printed 50 and 49, and that's equal to 49. So let's try to run this program and see the output. Okay, this is the output. The smallest of the values between 50 and 49, that's equal to 49. I hope that you have learned all these four different categories of function. Let's try to work on a small another function. This time, the same return value and return value and arguments. Okay, so we're going to pass one argument, okay, to from the main function. That's why we're going to declare res for storing the result, and then one variable. Let's assume we're going to call this variable as integer a. So we're going to enter a value for a. Okay, we will enter a value for a, and then we're going to like this, and then we're going to pass the function. We're going to call the function. The function name is square. We're going to pass the value through this function definition. Okay, and then we're going to print this, the square of a is equal to res. So we're going to print the square of a. Now a will be passed to this function. So now let's try to write the definition of the function sqr, and now here what we do is we are going to write integer x. So return what? Return x into x. Now what happens? See, first of all, we will enter a value. That value will be stored. Suppose we enter 5. 5 is stored in a. Then there is a call to function. Okay, so this 5 will be passed to this. X will receive 5, and then 5 into 5, that is 25. So return statement is going to return a value back to the main function. That 25 is stored in res variable. The square of a, which is 5, that's equal to 25, will be printed on the screen. So let's try to run this program. Okay, let's try to run this program. Fine. So 9 is the value which will be passed to the square function. Now you can see the square of 9 is 81. So I hope that you have learned these four categories of function. So thank you very much. If you still have any question, you can ask your question.